So if you'd like to turn over with me, let's switch gears and think about an invitation. Let's turn over to Acts chapter 17. Acts chapter 17. This is the familiar story of when Paul talked about the unknown God. So if you remember here, Paul is he's standing in the midst of the Areopagus, right? This is this place where these curious minds would gather and they would discuss all manner of things, right? Philosophers discussing religion and other ideas, sharing these ideas together and just talking all day, right? This was a form of entertainment for them, and they were talking about these things. And Paul was brought here because they thought he was preaching something different, something they hadn't heard, and they wanted to know more about what Paul had to say. They wanted to know what was this thing that he was preaching and talking about. And so he's brought here. And so here Paul is amongst this crowd of curious men who want to know what is he talking about. And Paul, as he's standing here, and there are lots of altars to different idols, he sees this one with this inscription that says, "To an unknown God." And so they were so religious and superstitious, and they had so many idols, they did not want to skip one. They did not want to skip a god. And so they made an altar for whatever god they might have missed. The unknown God, the one we don't know the name of or we happen to overlook. We have one here for you, right? That's what they were doing. Paul looks at this and uses this to start his lesson. He uses this in-world example to kick off his lesson. He sees this altar, this inscription to an unknown God. And so in verse 23, he says, "Therefore, what you worship in ignorance, this I proclaim to you." Paul uses this to start his lesson. And from there he goes on and he starts to preach to them. I think this is such a skillful thing to try and develop in one's own life, is how to take advantage of these doors that are presented to us. How to open them up and engage people in conversation about the Bible. Because, see, Paul could have come to this meeting, he could have looked around at all these curious men, and he could have started out his sermon very differently. He could have said, "I look around and I see all these idols, and I see that you're all going to hell." Right? He could have done that, and he's not wrong if that's the way he leads off. And then he loses his audience immediately, because he immediately starts attacking them, telling them how bad they are, and putting them on the defensive. Rather, he speaks to their ignorance, right? He says, "What you worship in ignorance." Now, he's not trying to insult them there. Sometimes when we tell someone they're ignorant, we mean it as an insult. What ignorant means is you don't know a thing. There's a thing you don't know. And that's the way he's using that word. There's this thing that you don't know. And so I'm going to speak to your lack of knowledge. I'm going to help you. I want to talk to you about it. The reason I bring this particular verse up here is because this time of year, everyone is thinking around the U.S. about the idea of Christmas. It's on many people's minds. And people who are not normally open to talking about Jesus are suddenly willing to entertain a conversation about him. Perhaps they're going to go to church with their family. This may be 1 or 2 times of the year that they go to church with their family. This may be the first time that they mention Jesus' name because they're singing a Christmas carol that talks about the birth of Jesus. Maybe they're going and they're watching a nativity play, right? And they're seeing a story about the birth of Jesus. At this time of year, Jesus is on many people's minds when he might not normally be there. And so this is an open door. This is just like that altar there. It's an opportunity for us as Christians to open that door and tell them more about it. Now, we could say, as people talk to us about Christmas, we could say, well, that's not a Church of Christ sanctioned holiday or anything. You know that that was founded in weird ways, and that doesn't represent everything in the Bible. You know that there weren't actually 3 wise men. You could pick apart these things, and all that you're going to do by taking that kind of attitude is just have people call you a Grinch and walk away, right? But this is a time when you can use this as a leaping board. Hey, you know that song that you're singing about? Did you know about this in the Bible? And you can open it up with them. You can talk to them about it. They're receptive to these sorts of things. This is a time which should be a great opportunity for those of God's people, because it's a time when people will listen to what we want to tell them. This is the beginning of the gospel. The good news is the birth of Jesus. So maybe you want to ultimately get them to the death and resurrection of Jesus so that they appreciate that, so that they want to be saved, so that they want to be baptized. But that's not where Matthew starts talking about Jesus. When he gives his account, he goes through his genealogy and leads up and starts talking about the birth of Jesus. And he leads chronologically through his life. He gets to the resurrection. He gets to the death and resurrection of Jesus eventually. But he does go through the birth first. Let's remember to take advantage of these open doors. This is a time for all of us to learn how to give an invitation to someone, how to invite someone into a conversation about Jesus and teach them. Teach their ignorance. Help them know more than what they know now. Many people just know about the birth. Maybe you can lead them on past that. Tell them a little bit more. Explain to them why there are so many songs about rejoicing about this event. Why was this such a happy event? Right? Why was Jesus' birth so significant that there are so many songs written about it? These are opportunities. And so what I want for you to take away from this is perhaps don't be so quick to just shut someone down and to tell them how wrong they are. But rather, you can recognize that they might not know as much, but you know more. And so you can speak and preach to their ignorance, just as Paul did. Use Paul's example, accept these open doors, and learn how to extend an invitation to learn more about Jesus to people around us. Of course, we also have this time of invitation because, as we've talked about tonight, none of us are perfect, right? The only way for us to be found blameless is because of Jesus, because he died for us and he washed away our sins. And even still, we struggle and we slip up from time to time. It's one of the reasons we meet as a congregation and as a church, is so that we can edify and exhort one another. Because we all struggle from time to time. We all need help. We need prayers, we need encouragement, we need kindness from one another. And we have this time of invitation for those who need that edification, who need to be exhorted, who need help. And so if there's something in your life right now that's holding you down and holding you back, and you need the help of your brothers and sisters, we'd encourage you to come forward, to have a seat on the front. Make known your burden so we can lift it together with you and help you out. Whatever need you have, we encourage you to come forward now as we stand and sing.